Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today. We are in for a very special treat today. Of course, like any other day, I interview the best people in the world at whatever topic they are specialists in, and today's no different. With me today, joining the show, I have Dr. Sri. Dr. Sri is a neuroscientist who resides in the Netherlands. She uses a unique and integrated approach, combining psychology principles with science to guide professionals to self mastery. She is the founder of Courage Quest, and with a PhD in cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, she is a leading expert on both emotional intelligence and confidence. Thank you so much for being on our show today, Dr. Sri.
Thank you very much, Tara. It's a pleasure to be here and an amazing opportunity to talk about a subject that's so close to my heart. Yeah, so happy to be here.
Awesome. I love it. Confidence, such an important topic. And I never knew how interested other people were in confidence until I started to write my book and started to talk about it myself. And, it seems like there's a lot of misconceptions out there. What is confidence? What is not confidence? And I think people need a guide today. So, your professional opinion weighs heavily here, right? You're the expert. What is confidence? If you had to define it, how would you define it, Sri?
That's a great question. That's a great starting point, too. For a very long time, I really couldn't define what confidence was. I thought it was something that, it just comes and goes, and you need to have them if you want to have a good quality of life. Up until I started doing my PhD and being on this coaching sector or the coaching field, I began to realize what confidence actually meant. In layman's terms, it's basically the belief in one's own potential, belief in one's own skills, the belief that you will be able to take the right decisions and make the right judgments or make the right choices in life, right?
Mhm.
And it's not an abstract idea because it's deeply rooted in the brain and it's a complex psychological construct that influences our thoughts, influences our emotions, influences our feelings, and thereby the actions. And all together basically constitute the quality of our life, right? Yeah, so that's confidence for me right now.
It's integrated. It's not just one part. I like to think of it as confidence is in order to really gain confidence, you have to work on your whole person, your mind, body, your soul, all of it. But it's that self belief, right? Um, and as children, they have confidence. And then over time, that confidence kind of starts to dissipate. I like to think of it as like a confidence meter. It starts off full and all the way at the top, and then through
Right.
struggles, adversity, trauma, rejection, fear, whatever, that confidence meter starts to dissipate a little bit over time, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And in scientific terms, that's what you call as confidence continuum, right? You
Mm.
have these levels of confidence, as you mentioned very beautifully, that we've gone through all of those levels in some point of our life, from low self-confidence to overconfidence to
Mm.
balanced confidence, trying to figure out where we are and what works for us and what contributes to the best quality of our life, right? So it starts off definitely at a really good confidence level as as you start growing up, and experiences, learning, memories shape that, give it more meaning, give it more depth. And it's interesting, it's fascinating how these are all intertwined and play a pivotal role in our life.
Yes, it's so important. But I think it's so right on, A lot of people say, "Oh, you're not born with confidence," but I honestly think that, that young children, they really are confident, and it's again through societal pressures and all of these things that continuum, as you say. I call it a meter. You call it a continuum, but it's the same thing, right?
It's the
That it
same.
just starts to go down. And that's so interesting, but it gives me hope because if the meter can go down, feel like you can put back in it, right? And it can start to go back up again.
Yes, absolutely. So when you are there in those levels of the meter, right, you
Mm.
begin to understand what contributes to those different levels. You start learning, you start associating all those learned experiences with events that has happened in the past, because that's the beauty of human beings is introspection, right? Like you begin to assess your own skills, how you've learned certain things as you grew up, and how to make rational judgments, choices, and use them to predict the upcoming events in your life.
Mm.
And when you have so much control, when your brain has that capacity to help you perceive those and connect the dots, it's so much easy to just move along that confidence meter, depending on what you want to do.
I love that. It's so important because I feel like, Shri, life is hard. You know, so many people out there are suffering right now. Look, we've got mass layoffs happening. We've got um, all sorts of things in our lives constantly. Life is pulling at us in a different kind of way every single day. We've got a lot going on. There's toxic workplaces, toxic relationships, friendships or otherwise, right? That work to pull down our confidence over time. I know that's how it was for me, especially with toxic workplaces and work environments. And as we go into adulthood, if we don't get this confidence in check, it can lead to a whole host of other things. And for me, it was, depression was a side effect of that, and anxiety. So confidence really helped me combat that, that just downness, that feeling of I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving. And when I started to develop confidence, it's like that those thoughts went away a lot and started to dissipate. And it wasn't an immediate switch, but it did happen over time. And it was with enough practice. I think that's another key part too. You got to get your reps in. This is like a sport. It's something that requires mental fortitude and constant practice and determination, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. Because confidence is not something that's you think and you get. No,
Hmm.
you don't wait for confidence to come. You can develop it at any point in life, right? And when it comes to confidence, and as I mentioned before, it's a future. I mean, it's a complex psychological construct that is deeply interconnected within different brain regions.
Mm.
And I can keep talking hours about it, but I want to, for the sake of this session and for the sake of the topic, I want to name two main brain regions that are involved in helping you build that confidence. One is the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive hub of your brain, right? It's in the frontal forebrain area. It helps you to make decisions, moral reasoning, judgments, prediction,
Mm.
helps you weigh out pros and cons of any situation. But it's also the reason for self belief, the region for self belief.
Who knew? Who knew? Who knew there was a region for self belief? That is fascinating.
which is which makes perfectly sense for me, because when you have the region that helps you weigh your strengths and your weaknesses, your pros and your cons, that automatically helps you build that self-belief, right?
Wow.
So this is one big brain region that's involved. But what another important region that's also involved is the region called amygdala. It's an almond size shape in the brain
Mhm.
that is involved in emotion processing. It's widely studied for fear processing, and together with prefrontal cortex and so many other brain regions that is involved in learning and memory retrieval. Together, they help you assess if a situation is known or unknown, how many known variables are there, how many unknown variables are there. Have we done this before in the past? Can we collect evidence of it? Right? Is it safe? Is it threatening?
Mm.
Helps you process so many information, right? And that's the fascinating part of it, because as much as a lot of people may believe that, hey, I'm doing exactly what someone else is doing,
Mm-hmm.
my experiences are completely different from someone else's experiences. That puts me so much more unique than someone else. So that's also the reason why what works for someone else will not work for us, for me, or for you. And it varies with context, because the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex only remembers your experience, doesn't know
Wow.
someone else's experience, right? So it's a beautifully complex process that I'm still trying to grasp the entirety of it, and probably would spend the rest of my life trying to understand it, but it fascinates me.
It is. It's fascinating. I'm waiting for your book to come out. The Neuroscience of Confidence. I'm waiting for it.
Well, I have a template to follow now, so I have to keep up to it.
That's right. I'll help you with marketing. That's right. But you mentioned the prefrontal cortex. You mentioned the amygdala. Where is fear? Where does fear play into all of this? It's scary, right? People are afraid to change. People are afraid of the unknown. And kind of like what you were saying, our brain is a program based on our own experience, and then it help guides us to make future decisions. So is that why we're afraid of the unknown and afraid of change? What can you elaborate on that a little bit?
It's a fascinating question. It's also an interesting one, because our brain are naturally designed to keep us safe.
Right.
It loves familiarity.
Comfortable.
Yes, it loves comfort, because familiarity makes us feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't like change. It doesn't like the unknown. Or if you're thrown into that situation, it tries so hard to predict, based on so many variables, based on assumptions, based on past experience, based on someone else's experiences. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't care, but it tries to predict, to get that sense of control, to feel safe.
Mm.
So it always tries to resist change. And one of the ways that the brain's resistance manifests is as lack of confidence or fear.
Hmm.
Sometimes overwhelm and anxiety is all combined and intertwined with it. It doesn't want to change. It comes up with various excuses for you to not take that step, right? All the what ifs,
Hmm.
right? Oh, what if this doesn't work? What if you fail? What if someone tells something? All the negatives,
Yeah.
right? So this is when there are too many unknown variables in a given situation, your amygdala first starts assessing the situation. Okay, is it safe? Is it not safe? Should I protect? And when there are too many unknown variables, it starts activating all the neurons within it. So it gets really activated, and it's widely known to induce fear-based emotions. Why? Because it takes all the memories of the past and tries to protect you, because there are so many unknown. It just cannot predict. And what this happens is, when you have an overactivated amygdala, your stress response increases, right? Your body goes into the alert mode. The fight, flight, fright response gets activated. And at the same time, because of this stress stimulus, your blood flow to the prefrontal cortex gets messed up.
Hmm.
One of the two things happens. This is still under study. One of the two things happens. One is Because of this messed up blood flow, your prefrontal cortex functioning shuts down, right? And you're not able to reason the situation or assess the situation rationally. So in this case, your fear response is heightened and you're nervous, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, and you just cannot make decisions. You just cannot make the step and you retreat.
Hmm. Ooh, that sounds familiar to a lot of
A
us.
lot of us, yes, indeed. But in some other situations where the stress response is not that high, sometimes you still have the activation of the prefrontal cortex. And what it can do is make you start overanalyzing things.
Yes.
You start getting into analysis mode, and that leads to procrastination. So,
Analysis paralysis is what I call it. Over analyzing. And then brain fog goes into that too. Disorientation, even. You're like, what am I doing? There's a lot that goes into this.
there's a lot that goes in, and it varies from individual to individual. It varies from context to context. So it's not yet clear how the prefrontal cortex functions during fearful experiences, right? Because one of the thing about prefrontal cortex is not just about decision making and rational reasoning. It's also about self belief. You tend to doubt yourself, and you tend to undermine your own potential because your emotions are so much heightened
Hmm.
that you just cannot see your own potential.
You can't see the forest through the trees, can you?
However, the beauty of it is to acknowledge that these processes are absolutely normal. They are normal functions of brain. It actually means that your brain is functioning in a normal way. One of the reasons. Like, there could be several other diagnoses too. And when you acknowledge them, you can start taking steps to overcome them.
Mm. Yes. You have to acknowledge that first, though. And I'm a big believer in you can't manage what you can't measure. So you have to acknowledge that it's there in order for you to manage it and to ultimately change the behavior, right?
Yeah. So fear response is absolutely normal when you are confronting the unknown, and you're treading unknown waters, and you're challenging yourself, doing some things totally new that you've never done before.
Yeah. Wow. I'm thinking of my poor amygdala right now. It probably goes off 24 hours a day because I'm constantly doing something that I'm afraid of.
The thing about amygdala is it does process emotions, and one of the most studied emotion is fear, but it is also involved in giving you the positive emotions, right? So, yeah, it's just fascinating. Just such an almond-shaped brain region can do so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the first time I stepped on stage.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
My amygdala must have been really firing at that
Mine is probably firing right
time.
now.
Yep. I know. I dragged you on here. Um, but I think this is just so fascinating. Again, it happens in the brain, but then it comes out through our actions. And then ultimately our results, right? Are we facing our fears? And, the fascinating thing is, all of these fight or flight responses, they're great. They helped us evolve as a species, right? So when a saber-toothed tiger came, guess what? That fight or flight kicked in, and we were able to, our instincts kicked in, right? And we were able to hopefully defend ourselves. But now we have things like anxiety from work, financial instability, concerns, going 100 places at once, right? We have a lot going on in our lives. And now we have anxiety. There's no saber-tooth tiger, thank gosh. But now we have other things that are making those fear responses kick in. So this is something that's evolved with us over time, but we can use it, right, for the good, for growth. Don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that example of saber-toothed tiger because
I'm so
basically,
glad they don't exist anymore.
yeah, they don't. No, because it basically underlines the fact that the brain was made in the first place to protect us from physical harm,
Yes.
but we've evolved it to protect us from mental harm. For me, one of the things that works the best thing that works for me in a very mentally unsafe situation is what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Hmm.
Am I going to die?
Mm.
If the answer is no, I know at least I've conquered parts of my fear. And then it's about conquering the rest of it.
Put it into perspective.
Put it into perspective.
That's pretty key. Are you going to die? If the answer is no, no,
Is the
probably
saber-tooth tiger going to
wasting
kill
time.
you? Oh, yeah.
Funny. Wow. So, we, like I said, we have all of these anxieties now, and it's inhibiting our confidence and our self belief, and it's preventing us from doing things that are outside of our comfort zone that we're afraid of, but that can cause growth. So, now that we know the problems, what are some strategies that we
Yes.
can overcome this fear and actually cultivate confidence on a scientific level? What are some strategies, Shri?
Now that's a great question because before I move into the strategies, I just want to emphasize that when we are in this anxious state of mind, and when we are continuing to allow ourselves to be in that state of mind, it turns from an acute phase to a chronic phase. And you're chronically stressed,
Mm-hmm.
chronically anxious, and it changes the structure of your brain. And this has been proven through imaging studies. And it's way harder to come back from that point if we can rather realize it at an early on stage and take interventions to get to that point. So some of the interventions or some of the strategies that I go with is the first and the foremost is self-awareness, introspection. Because confidence is all about the belief that you're capable of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Believe that you have the skill and the potential. So, what is the better way than to understand that through introspection and self-awareness? So here's the thing: there was a study that was conducted in 2007 on 256 people, and people were distributed into two groups. One who were aware of their skills and abilities and their strengths, and who could analyze them and extrapolate them to any situation, and the other group who weren't so sure about their skills and abilities. They had a lot of things that they were not aware of. And when they did some quantitative studies on these two groups, they found out that the people with greater awareness of their own self and abilities had higher self confidence,
Yeah.
which makes perfect sense because you have more belief in your abilities. You know that you can do this. So, self awareness gives us the clarity of yourself and where you want to go with yourself, the goal, right?
Wow.
So that's the first one. The second one is self compassion. Self compassion, it's basically the ability to be kind, to forgive oneself, and to understand oneself in times of adversity. This self compassion builds resilience,
Mm.
right?
Wow.
It gives way to gratitude, which is your G in your book of
Yeah.
grasp, right? And research that's been done using imaging studies were done on people who engaged in self-compassion practices, mindfulness, and People with greater self compassion had higher activity in brain areas that were associated with positive emotions. So technically, they felt good all the time. And this feeling of being good in alongside self-awareness just built their confidence, fueled their confidence so much more. And so self-awareness and self-compassion gives
Mhm.
clarity, right? And it fuels the self-belief, which gives us the courage to take action, to face everything and rise, which is my acronym for fear, which I take. So then it all comes down to challenging yourself and growing by taking actionable steps.
Wow, so many gold nuggets there. My favorite part, if I could pick one, would be, before we started talking about those three steps there, you talked about, chronic stress and its impact on the brain and how it can actually change the physiology of your brain, right? But then you said, the gratitude actually can rewire the brain too. So you can heal your brain, you can rewire it, you can form new beliefs, you can build confidence through that gratitude, right? That's and then also having that self-compassion is so important. That to not expect perfection. I think that's really important, especially for a lot of high achievers like us. I'll be the first to say it.
I
I've,
second that.
yep, we second. I've suffered from perfectionism. I've been that classic overachiever, right? That also at the same time never felt like they were doing enough. But, kind of the older you get, you realize that have some self compassion, have some empathy on yourself. And that, that's a good first step, really, to improving your self confidence and the level of self belief you have. And for me, that's exactly right on. It was, and that's why gratitude is my step there. In order for me to start, having different thought patterns, and limit negative self talk, limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, of those things, it was through self compassion and through gratitude. And that really does change the, wiring of your brain. And again, it helps form those new beliefs. And if you can do that, you can really start to gain confidence. So important.
Yeah, no, I keep telling to myself and to everyone around me, nobody can love you more than you.
Ah, yes.
Nobody. And if you can't show yourself the kindness, and if you can't tell yourself that it's okay to fail, it's okay to not be perfect, everything is but then becomes easier to reach.
Yes. I love that. So confidence is attainable for anyone. I think that's really an important message that I gleaned from this conversation. So oftentimes we look at other people, and social media is not a great example of this. And we, think, oh, they're so successful. They've got this amazing life. Success, it looks like, especially if you're in a depressed state, it looks like it's for other people. Same thing when you're lacking confidence and self belief, and you see somebody who's very confident. You say, "Oh, that must be for other people. That's not for me. There's no way I can attain that." But in the reality, our brains are they're plastic, right? Or plasticity, I should say. They have plasticity, and they can be changed. They're not. Nothing's written in stone, especially our brains, right? We can change this narrative
Yeah,
through some behavioral therapy.
absolutely. And you brought three main nuggets that I just want to
Yes.
quickly give a glimpse into. Number one, comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Why comparison never works for us is just as we discussed in this session is that Your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex does not know someone else's experiences and what they have gone through in their life. So comparison becomes meaningless in your journey. The second one is surrounding yourself with positive people, because brain is innately attracted to confident people, to positive people, and getting feedback from those positive people. So positive feedback improves our self-esteem and self-belief. That fuels our confidence. So it's really important to find your tribe who can give you that positive feedback and push you to keep challenging that comfort zone. And brain craves for reward and recognition, right? So if we as perfectionists, I had to learn the hard way too, if we are going to keep focusing on the outcome, we are going to forget the progress that we made. So recognizing those progress that we made and rewarding ourselves is like rewarding the brain for its efforts. It's really important. Yeah. So
Yes.
those were the extra tips.
I love that. But yeah, celebrate your wins, big or small, right? And have that journey, great gratitude for the journey along the way. That was a hard lesson for me that, it took me a long time to, have gratitude for my past and, struggles, failures, traumas, right? But you know what? If we can look back on those things with gratitude for the lessons learned too, and then have some self compassion. And then I think those combined things, they can really help pave the way for a confident life, but also a fulfilling and purposeful one too.
And not to forget forgiveness. For me, that was a big
Yes.
thing, to forgive myself for the
Yeah,
decisions that I've made. They're right or wrong, but it's what made me who I am today.
that's right. We can be our own worst critics, but why? Let's forget about it. How about being our best advocates?
That
Flip the
approach,
script, right?
reframing the mindset.
Yes, yes. And instead of saying all the things that will go wrong, that's just remember that your fear kicking in. Why don't we reframe it to how is this going to go really right?
Yeah, there's a 50% probability of things going right too.
Yep.
So,
I love that. That is so great. Wow. I feel more knowledgeable already. And what a topic of confidence.
absolutely.
When I first started this journey of confidence, I had no idea how much science was actually involved in it. But it's way more science than I think a lot of people realize. There's your actual brain, there's your past, there's psychology, there's childhood things that we need to think about, there's things in our present. um, but at the end of the day, let's all have some self-compassion. Know that confidence is possible for us all, not just general confidence, but really high confidence can be possible for anyone, regardless of where we start. So even if you feel like you're unconfident right now, you're lacking self belief, you're afraid to face your fear, you're living inside your comfort zone, you can become confident. It just takes time and it's a process, just like anything else, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And it's your journey, and your journey is yours alone.
That's right. I love that. Dr. Shri, such a blessing to us all. How can someone get a hold of you? Obviously, you're on LinkedIn. Any other places?
Now, LinkedIn is my place to be. So everyone can contact me through LinkedIn. And I'd be more than happy to support any requests, or probably even enter into much detailed discussions about this neuroscience. And I'd really appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, reach out to Dr. Shri. She is an expert on this topic of confidence, but I love how she combines the science of confidence with the psychological principles to help give you that well rounded approach. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the show today, and we will see you on the next episode.